This is the Equipping Students for Diversity project. The research team comprised Dr. Kara Fletcher, Dr. Vivian Fublambo, and myself, Dr. Funkelba. We looked at how we can best equip students in professional courses, social work and nursing, to engage with diverse populations. This is based on the fact that we recognize that Saskatoon is experiencing a rapid influx of diverse people because of the liberalization of immigration policies. Also, the university does have as its strategic plan internationalization and indigenization. So we are looking forward to having more indigenous people in the classroom, and also these two professions work with a lot of indigenous people, immigrants, and refugees. So it is important that they be properly equipped to serve these populations. We also recognize that the traditional lecture method is passive, does not encourage engagement, and promotes power differentials. Based on this, we introduced three creative strategies: the perspective taking through the blanket exercise, arts-based strategies through making art to reflect on feelings and thoughts evoked by what they're learning. We also use case-based approach or problem solving. At the end of the study, we conducted a focus group, actually 4 focus groups and a few interviews to find out from students the impact of these strategies on their learning. My colleagues will tell you about some of our very interesting and nuanced findings.
Speaking about 2 of the themes that emerged through our focus groups and interviews. The first theme was eye-opening, and I'm going to use a quote from one of our participants to represent our findings here. One participant said, "It gives you the history, but also brings you back from where you had some experience of being discriminated, of being segregated, of being different, the actual implementation of that blanket exercise was so good that it not only makes you listen, but actually makes you empathize." And the students reflecting on the blanket exercise that Dr. Oba spoke of, and how it was really an eye-opener for them in terms of understanding what it was like for Indigenous peoples in Canada. The second quote that represents our theme of eye-opening was, "I didn't realize that people would avoid getting medical treatment because of being treated differently. I didn't think it was a big issue nowadays, but it still is. Like just coming into nursing and realizing that, and just treating everyone the same, and trying not to even put anyone with a bias or a personal opinion." And this nursing student who participated was speaking about how they didn't recognize that who you are can actually impact the medical treatment that you receive. And so for them, it was a real eye-opener. The second theme that I'm going to illustrate here was growth. And students spoke quite frequently about their personal growth. One of the students called me white privilege, or had this always said white privilege. "You're white privileged," or stuff like that. So I could, with the communication techniques that I learned, I could kind of use open-ended questions or some clarification to get, okay, why would you say something like that? Where do you get this kind of information? Like, I would like to know where it comes from. So that kind of helped me in that aspect, I guess. So this student speaking to how before they would have maybe experienced being called white privileged or having privilege because of being white as something perhaps more defensive or more upsetting, but through these learning activities was able to instead consider, why would this student say this, and what sort of things would cause them to see me in this light. And so they experienced their own level of personal growth through that. And so what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Dr. Vivian Fublambo to come and speak about the 2 other themes that we found in this study.
So I'll be speaking to 2 themes out of the 5 themes that emerged from the data. And the first theme is empathy. So the students shared that from participating in these 3 teaching approaches, that's perspective taking, context-based learning, and arts-based, they were able to put themselves in their colleagues' situation as well as their client's situation. And so this is a very good quote that came from one of the participants, a fourth-year social work student, sharing about empathy. When it comes to perspective taking, being able to put yourself in the shoes of those you are trying to support, and just trying to understand how history played a role in all the obstacles that people faced. So the approaches help the student to be more empathetic, especially when they haven't gone through what their clients would have gone through, but they would be able to empathize with them. The second thing that I'll be speaking to is validation. The students shared that from the case studies that they shared in class, these case studies were either pre-designed by the research team or from the students sharing their clinical experiences as case studies. So they said that through sharing of these experiences, their experiences at the clinical practicum were validated. And so I have a quote here. This is a student who went back to one of their colleagues and confirmed to that person how that colleague's experience helps to validate his experience. And this is the quote. You can actually say, you know what, I was feeling so depressed, but after what you said, I felt better. It was not what I thought it was, and it was not as bad as I thought it was. Discussion of the cases helped to value my experience. So these are the two main things that I'm speaking to: validation of student experiences and empathy.
In summary, based on the findings you heard from my colleagues, we saw that this study has great promise for better teaching, especially in professional courses. The students expressed that they've not had much of the arts and so on in their classes. They're used to the lecturer standing in front of the class and being the expert and teaching them. But with this method, they were able to engage, listen to each other, get to really experience. It was an immersive, experiential learning opportunity for them. And they said that they learned a lot more than they would have in a regular classroom. They also recognized that they would be able to use this in their practice, which was one of our questions to them. They would use it with people with disabilities. They would use it with people who are non-verbal. They would use it with immigrants and refugees for whom English or French may not be their first language. They will use it with people who have experienced trauma, who are trying to express difficult, tough, or even taboo topics like residential school and racism, that there's a lot of resistance to expressing. Well, they can express this through their art. So these students felt that the classroom simulated what will happen in real life and encouraged more of this to be infused into other classrooms. So on behalf of my colleagues once again, we want to really thank the President for this seed fund that enabled us to procure products, get facilitators to really simulate a learning experience that we hope we will, in further studies, be able to incorporate into other classes. Thank you very much.